Hello, and welcome back to another episode of How Good Were They, the podcast where we look at some of football's greatest ever players and teams and decide once and for all how good were they. Today we're looking at one of our favourite personal players, known as the Galloping Major, Hungary's superstar, the captain of the golden team. It is, of course, Ferenc Puskas. Thoughts?
This is a guy who I can't place when I first heard his story, but as soon as you heard it, you were hooked. And
Yeah.
when we started to look into this Hungary team, when you hear the record of this Hungary team that he played in, unbeaten for 6 years apart from one World Cup
One game, yeah.
You're gripped by it because, Hungary to us, are they one of football's great teams? Probably not. But I would certainly argue to anyone in the world now that this is one of my favourite teams of all time, 1954, and this period of time. And Puskás was the guy for this team.
And believe it or not, we weren't alive to see this team actually play, but we've seen quite a lot of footage of this team. Probably one of the most we've seen of any side pre 1980, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
We've really
written about them, read about them, watched them.
And the one player that stood out of that side was Puskás, wasn't it? For his goal scoring exploits in that team. Inside forward, not your conventional striker of today, is a bit different with the formations back then. Inside forward, he was quite creative as well as being a goal scorer. Born in 1927 in Budapest, played for Kispest and then Budapest Honvéd, which I'm sure we'll look at later about how that side worked. And then, of course, he went to Real Madrid later in his career as well and was an icon there as well. Hungary, for them, he obviously won the Olympic Games in 1952, which back then was a bit more
big deal,
especially to the Eastern European nations who were, I think, amateur in a weird kind of way, even though they weren't really. And of course, loses the World Cup final, but won so many trophies for Real Madrid. So, he won a lot of trophies in Hungary with Budapest Honvéd, but he also won, I think, 3 European Cups with Real Madrid. He was top scorer in La Liga, I think 4 times as well. Won La Liga itself 5 times. So a glittering trophy cabinet for our boy.
Yeah, and I think modern people will know his name from obviously the Puskás Award, the FIFA award for the best goal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
scored across the world now. And obviously through the various sort of viral ones of League of Ireland being included, or things like this.
Yeah.
I don't think he was necessarily known for stunning goals as such, but it was a way of honouring one of football's great men and obviously naming this award after him.
Who might have been forgotten otherwise.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. I remember first hearing about Puskas in school, actually. As one of our friends, I think we were talking about, I don't know who would have been back then. It would have been around 2007, 2008. Ronaldo probably scored a lot of goals for United. R9 has scored a few goals before that. But there was never any real goal scorers who were scoring more than they were playing.
Yes, yeah.
And my friend said, "Oh, you should see about this old player called Puskás. He was amazing back in the 50s, and he scored 84 goals in 85 games for Hungary." And I thought, "What? That's an insane record."
Yeah.
And looked into it further, and his records get better than that. Budapest Honvéd. Do you want to hear his stats for them?
Go on.
Okay, 382 goals. Guess how many games?
Not much more, if not less.
Less. It's 367 games. So he's got 50 more goals than games. Mental.
Yeah.
Like insane stats.
Yeah.
Real Madrid, he didn't slow down. 242 goals in 262 games.
Nice.
So still towards the end of his career.
Yeah.
Because he didn't join Madrid. I think he was 31 when he joined Madrid. So he was, what many would believe to be past your peak.
Definitely. Yeah, for that age where you're looking after yourselves the same way.
And as we'll see later on, he had been 2 years out of the game before that point, but he'd been banned by FIFA. So altogether, I think 624 goals in 629 games.
Not bad. I mean,
at club level. At international goals, I think it's over 700 goals. It's a stupidly good record, and it's those numbers that you just didn't see really until, we did see Van Basten do it recently, but until Messi and Ronaldo.
Yeah, and you don't. Maybe some do want to give him credit, but you don't want to give him credit. But it is like a Cristiano Ronaldo level of goal scoring. That sort of consistency over such a period of time and kept going to his latter years. But I suppose he didn't take a Saudi move and do it in a league where goals are perhaps worth slightly less. Maybe he did it in La Liga for Real Madrid. At the time, they were absolutely dominant, but he played his part in a great side, in one of the great sides of all time.
Yeah, right. Can you tell me any notable moments in Ferenc Puskás' career?
Well, I think probably the one that everyone will remember, because you will have seen it if you were a British football fan as well, which I suppose quite a lot of people listen to us are.
Yeah.
But also notable because of just how mind blowing it was at the time, is his infamous drag back goal as Hungary beat England at Wembley, the first time an international team outside of the British Isles beat England on home soil. 6-3. It blows people's minds at the time.
It did, yeah.
Absolutely blows
the
their
press
minds.
reports are crazy, aren't they?
Yeah, 1953. Hungary play England off the pitch, and Puskas is the man. And the footage of it, people will maybe not even know it's Puskas. I'm sure you've seen the footage of.
There's definitely a few clips on our Twitter.
Yeah, definitely check it out. Where he drags the ball back and sends Billy Wright flying.
Who's one of the best international defenders?
Yeah, fantastic player.
Yeah.
And he just is incredible in that game, and that's probably where he announces himself to British fans, I suppose, at that time. Maybe. And it was in the build up to a World Cup that everyone was convinced, because of their run that they were on, that they were going to win that World Cup.
And why wouldn't you? And even when they start that World Cup, they go and beat. I think they win the first 8-3 against West Germany, who they later play in the final. I think they stick 9 past South Korea. They scored 4 past Brazil. Beat Brazil 4-2. Beat Uruguay, the reigning champions 4-2.
Yeah.
So we looked at Brazil 8-2 last week, and we saw they scored 15 goals in their games. I'm pretty sure they scored 25 Hungary. It's ridiculous. And they even scored 2 in the final. Go 2-0 up. Puskas scores in the final. They somehow, to the lot suspected maybe a bit of doping involved with the West German side, but they come back and they win. History is made. The miracle of Bern, as it's known.
Yeah, when a game gets miracle status, it's often for good reason. And there's a couple, as the Miracle of Istanbul, obviously being a famous one for Liverpool fans. But the Miracle of Bern is a real moment etched in football history, and it comes because that side was so good.
Especially in German history as well.
Yeah, it is. I've read some really interesting stuff from people like Beckenbauer, who talked about what an impact it had on young Germans to see their side do it. This is 9 years removed from the Second World War.
Yeah.
Germany was still, even the West Germans were still a little bit, to be expected, treated as a bit of a pariah in
the enemy,
in European. And certainly sport brings that to a head, isn't it? You want to beat them, and you still get it today, even with a German manager as England manager now. But there's still all the heart back to the World War and things like that, and this changes the course of West German football history, and perhaps it changes the course of Hungarian football history as well. The fact that they don't get over the line. But this guy, Ferenc Puskás, is the man in that team. And, it's a team full of superstars. Perhaps, again, not so well known, but certainly to us, they are, because we've heard about them and read about them so much. But, he's a guy who's a career, an enviable career for any footballer in the history of the game, isn't it?
And at club level, you probably say his biggest moment is the 1960 European Cup final, where he scores 4 goals in that final to outscore Di Stefano, who scored 3 goals as they beat Eintracht Frankfurt 7-3 at Hampden Park. So another big win on British soil,
which was the biggest until this season. It was the biggest result in terms of margin of victory for any European Cup until this stunning performance.
5-0 PSG.
PSG.
That was ridiculous. Right. If you haven't heard this podcast before, watch this podcast. I throw 3 curveballs at Gareth throughout to maybe reassess the legacy of these famous players or teams. We've looked at Brazil last week. We said, ultimately they didn't win the World Cup. Did they go for flair over results? We looked at Maldini's international career. So we're going to look at Puskás today. Would you like to know curveball number 1?
Go on, chuck him at me. I'm interested.
His career was stopped for 2 years between 1956 and 1958 due to the Hungarian Revolution. And that 2-year time period, has that taken some of his career away?
It's a tricky one, isn't it?
What does it add to the story?
Give us a bit more context as to sort of just what happened for listeners.
1956, obviously, Cold War. We got the East versus West, the Iron Curtain down the middle of Europe. Hungary is on the communist side of it, and the East, kind of a puppet state of the USSR. Hungarian Revolution takes place in 56 as the Hungarian team are abroad playing against I think it's Honvéd playing against Athletic Bilbao. The Hungarian Revolution happens. It's brutally suppressed by the communist regime, fronted by Russia or USSR. The players don't want to go home. They don't want to go back to a country where they don't feel safe. They decide to stay abroad and the Hungary team go on a world tour. They go to countries in Europe. They also go to Brazil as well. When they come back, they'll all go their separate ways. Puskas decides, I ain't going back to Hungary, even though he's that hero. As a result, possibly due to political pressure from the USSR, FIFA decides to ban Puskas and a lot of the Hungarian players from playing football because they've kind of turned their backs on their team. And when the Hungary team want them to play, they said no. And for doing that, they banned them. And you wouldn't get that today. But back then, I think it was the might of the USSR, how it was sway. They stopped him from playing, gave him a 2-year ban, in which he needed to find a new club. He comes back in 58 and joins Real Madrid. Age 31, so you'd think he's past his prime, but his goal scoring record for them, I think he scores 40 plus goals in quite a few seasons. Wins the Champions League 3 times in a row. He actually scored a hat-trick in another final, I think, the one that he lost to Benfica as well. You say he was Benfica, so he's got a ridiculous record.
Yeah, I think it adds to it, though. So, does it take it away? No, obviously, he lose 2 years of his career. But perhaps if that didn't happen, he never joins Real Madrid. And then if he never joins Real Madrid, that never happens, this whole journey to sort of definitely more worldwide fame, or sort of European-wide fame, because what he did in Real Madrid colours, that famous Los Blancos white, is what etches him in football history, and perhaps that's one of the important parts of the story in that way, I think.
Okay, all right. So next curveball is the what if. What if he had spent his whole career in Western Europe? Would he be regarded as greater than he is currently? So he played a lot of his career, especially his peak in Honvéd. If he had playing for Real Madrid the whole time, how would his career have gone, for example?
Yeah, that's so difficult to say.
It's a level of opposition in the Hungarian league. Was it as strong as the rest of Europe?
I think you can respond to that in terms of looking at the fact that Honvéd side was so good based on who they played. They did a world tour, like you mentioned later on, but they also did quite a few tours at other points in their history. One of them was at Molineux, interestingly, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Coming over to the United Kingdom, playing to Wolverhampton Wanderers, who were one of the best sides in Europe, or certainly in England at the time. And they lose 3-2, I think it is.
In the quagmire, is it? It was terrible conditions.
Yeah. A floodlit friendly, which is new for everyone. It's one of the world's first floodlit friendlies in that way, and they install these massive floodlights. Very clever decision, obviously. Now think about all those stadiums in the world that have floodlights, and they start to need to repay that, and so they start having these invitational matches, and they play Honvéd, who were considered one of the best sides of the world, and they win, and actually that match in itself results to the birth of the European Cup, because Wolves declare themselves world champions, and the French, so no, you're not, prove it on a world stage, so European stage, so really important. I think it's part of it's part of who he is. That Honvéd side, I think it is forgotten, probably the impact he had at Honvéd, because in some ways, sadly, who cares? The Real Madrid bit means more. But it's part of the story, the whole thing of, obviously under the communist regime in terms of what it means for Hungarian football. For him, he is etched in their memory. Their stadium is named after him, I think.
He's
the major title. I don't think he ever actually served. He was given that because he played for
the army team.
So Honvéd were taken over by the army, and effectively, rather than paying transfer fees, they could call up players to the army, and then you go, don't worry, you're not fight.
And is that why they could go say they're amateur as well?
Possibly so, yeah, because they're representing the army.
The army.
Yeah, possibly so. And MTK, another very good side, possibly more successful in some ways in terms of titles in Hungary. They were the police side, and so you go, oh, you're joining the police, but no, you're not. You're going to actually go and play for the national team in that way.
Same manager, Gustav Sebes for Honvéd.
Yeah, and it's something that we've seen and we've talked about in previous videos. Check them out on YouTube. How dictatorships or how populist regimes, things like that, they use sport to win people over. Everyone likes sport on the whole.
Sports washing.
It's sports, exactly. Sports washing. We still see it nowadays, and the Saudi image is that exactly.
Qatar World Cup, wasn't it?
Yeah, people accepting the Saudi dollar, and likewise with Qatar. It's very, very similar, and Sebes is appointed Minister of Sport and manager of the national team. And so what he says very cleverly, I suppose, is okay. Well, let's call everyone up to the one side. They play together as a club, and then when they play internationally together, they know how to work with each other.
Which is why they're so good.
They're so talented,
and the intricate play when they play is.
And you can't forget that bit of his career, and it probably is forgotten, but historically you can't forget it. So you can't take that away from him. Perhaps, obviously, the level of competition is slightly different. Yeah, okay, they were able to call players up without paying a transfer fee, but we're not talking about how that Honvéd side was built. And actually, they're playing a very good side in MTK anyway, so the quality was there in terms of that. It was a 2-horse league, it wasn't a 1-horse league.
I think ultimately, when they made the European Cup, though, in that first season, they do crash out.
Yeah, and they crash out a couple of times. And I think he wins perhaps one trophy internationally, and it's not a European Cup.
No,
it's the Mitropa Cup, which is the Eastern European sort of version of the European Cup.
Yeah.
A forerunner to it. But I think again it's part of his story, isn't it? And he, for Hungarian fans, certainly you can't forget what he did, and he's etched into their football history. It's something that I want to go. I very much want to go to Budapest at some point and just see elements of that legacy.
There's a big mural there, isn't there? Of the big three. Okay, and the final curveball is the failure. 1954 World Cup, West Germany, in Bern, rainy again, like it was against Wolves. They lose. Puskas is the captain of that side, and they lose that game.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the World Cup to go with his name. We said this with Van Basten. We said this about Maldini. They don't have the World Cup. And, does some of the blame rest on Puskas, who had been injured? He'd missed the quarterfinals. He missed semi-final. He probably wasn't fully fit to play the final. He does score straight away. And then I think, the rest of the game, I think he's kind of labouring around.
Yeah.
He possibly scores a goal that's disallowed at the end.
Yeah.
There is, of course, as Puskas himself is adamant that the West Germans had used amphetamines to make himself better in that game, to give him the speed to go and play really well. He actually, for that comment, German sides refused to play against any team with Puskas in until the United 60 European Cup final. When they have Eintracht Frankfurt, he has to publicly apologise for his comments in order to play in that game, which he scores 4 in. So good job, he does that. Yeah. But that team, he had been with them all the way through. He'd been their main man alongside Sandor Kocsis, alongside Zibor, Boschik, but they don't win it.
Yeah, and I think that it's a fair thing to label at someone like Puskas, who. Yeah, he definitely wouldn't be as forgotten as he is, perhaps, if he had that World Cup to his name. We've said previously how, certainly as people who are quite like Lionel Messi, how important that World Cup was for him, because it sort of finishes that argument. And that would have for him, and it would have looked great in the history books, having a Hungary World Cup win in there. West Germany won it so many times.
So many games.
So it is part of it, and he can't do it. That old phrase, he can't do it on a wet night. In this case in Bern.
Or in Birmingham.
Or in Birmingham, Wolverhampton. So I think absolutely that it's something that could be levelled at him. I don't like it, because I don't think he,
neither do I.
No, it's not. He's
class.
He was class. Some may say, I think another thing you could consider is was he as good as some of those Real Madrid players that he played with? Some would say Di Stefano,
Raymond Copa, Paco Gento as well.
But remember, he joined him later in his career. But there's definitely a fair shout that if you go to Spain, certainly Madrid, and you talk about the greatest players of all time, Di Stefano is talked about in that bracket, they will stick him in there.
You often have, as you do like top 10s of all time, or top 20s, Puskás, Di Stefano are often next to each other.
Yeah.
One above the other. I think often Di Stefano gets put a bit higher.
Yeah, and does he wins the 5, doesn't he? With
he wins all of them. Yeah.
Whereas obviously Puskás wins 3.
And he has the whole controversy of the transfer with Barca.
Yeah, and Puskás is really interesting too in terms of he stays in the game. He does get involved with the game later on too, isn't it? So he's not just a player. He actually spends some time managing too.
Right, let's go look at some what other players have said. Let's go on to our favourite quotist, Pele.
But he's got a quote about everyone.
Surely there's a ghostwriter. Right, he was ahead of his time, a true genius.
Yeah,
I think he was ahead of his time. Yeah. I agree with you there, Pele.
Pele saw him play, so at least we can trust this.
I'm gonna guess he was in Pele's 100.
Oh, 100%.
Because everyone was.
Everyone was.
You name a player, and I bet you were 100. I think what we might do is later on we might do a little quiz: were they or were they not in his 100? You have to say if they were or not. Okay, right, Johan Cruyff. If you want to understand total football, start with Puskás.
Nice. Well, that tells you a lot because Johan Cruyff is again one of another video we did, on the Mount Rushmore of great football players, and I think he said he was inspired by him. And I so many people who talk about it. I think even Ange Postecoglou, former of Tottenham, has said about how great Puskás was, and he's spoken about him and the influence that Puskás had on him. So,
and not the former Reading player.
Yes, yeah, they Puskás and Pele at one point, was they?
Yeah, they did, didn't they? That was mad. And Di Stefano says, Ferenc was the best partner I ever had. He made football look easy.
Nice.
That's quotes there about a legend of the game.
Yeah.
I'm sure we got a lot of quotes on our website about
100%.
And in our books.
And in our videos.
They're just behind you, actually, aren't they?
Yeah.
Do you want to pick them up? We have 2 books that we've written over the years. Football's 50 Most Important Moments and The History of Football in 90 Minutes. Loads and loads of history in there. So check it out. They're on Amazon. They're on Waterstones. All good booksellers.
Yeah.
We'll have it.
And it's worth having a look because what we certainly do in that second book in the History of Football in 90 Minutes is we're not just talking major moments. We're finding those pithy little moments because there's 120 of them.
Yeah.
And I think it's quite interesting to dive into some of these. And Puskás himself certainly appears
a few times. Okay, shall we hear some what listeners have said as well?
Yeah.
Shall we hear what some of the listeners have said about Ferenc Puskás?
Go on.
We asked the listeners, where should he be regarded in terms of the all-time greats? And Paul, who is a friend of the show, often messages us, Welsh football fan, he says, well, they're your favourite team, so he knows. He knows as well. They should have won a 54. We hammered the Germans, but... And then does kind of these emojis. A few emojis saying,
Yeah.
Okay.
It's nice that someone's listening to us because he knows they're our favourite team. Yeah, it's great. Peter Thornton says he should be on the top table. Interesting.
Fantastic. Graham, right up there with the legends like Pele and Cruyff, who came after. He invented ways of playing. That's a lovely line.
Nice. This is an interesting one here. So we've got here from Steve. For me, a true great is a World Cup winner. This is what we were saying, isn't it? So many above him.
So many. I don't know, but that's a interesting point, and it does link to what we've already said. Al F says much higher than every recency biased poll puts him. In a previous job, I had the great privilege of speaking to many Scottish greats in the 50s, 60s and 70s. That sounds like a great job.
Yeah.
And they would always put Puskás right up there in their top 3 or 4 players. That's a big era of football, that is.
Reese says easily top 10 of all time. Oh, good shout.
Yeah.
Good shout.
John McNichol says he was an absolutely fantastic player as well. And Mark F says Puskás one of the greatest footballers ever. And from the things I read and the old film I have seen, was the leading light in that magic Magyars side.
Nice.
Yeah, I think that's it, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
From the footage we've seen, because we, and it is old footage. If you don't, we haven't seen loads of it, have we? He is the main man still, and it is very impressive. I mean, that drag back goal itself is stupidly good, isn't it?
Stunning. There's footage of him playing in. I think it's Stanley Matthews's testimonial game. And he is even older in this. and he's class in that too. He scores a
he's
stunning goal in that.
Yeah.
You know, he's scoring goals. Remember how poor the technology was back then? The footballs were incredibly heavy.
The boots weren't as good.
The boots were terrible.
The pitches were
terrible. He's banging in things from outside the box.
The tackles that you'd be
on you know, he would have been kicked to pieces, and yet he still dominated those players. So yeah, you know, of course it's difficult to compare from now to then, but for people back then, he was one of the best.
That's a lot about the players. He was quite tenacious, though, even though he got a flair, but he was also very creative as well. He's just quite an all-round forward. I think he would fit in today pretty well.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's the old thing again. Give him modern fitness, modern technology. I think he'd be class still because he had that technique and that just clear talent.
Right, let's decide then once and for all. How good was Ferenc Puskas? Where would you put him? Where would you rank him in your all-time greats? Where would he be for you?
Oh, this is tricky.
Let's do all-time. I guess he's a striker. He's in the inside forward. All-time strikers. Is he in the top 5, top 10? Where does he go?
I think he's top 10 for me.
Yeah,
and I've got to be really difficult not to be too biased.
I think he has to be. I mean, that goal record, 624 and 629.
Yeah.
84 and 85 for Hungary. That is ridiculous levels of consistency at that level. Even when he was at the age of 31 signing him, he's 30. Was he 33 when he's in that 1960 final against Eintracht? He scores 4 goals.
Yeah.
That's.
I think he's definitely top 10. And there's not many players who've got awards and things like that named after him, and he does. He's honoured rightly for that. I would have him highly ranked, and I think he's someone that if you've not checked him out yet, have a look. Take a look.
So top 10 strikers. Where does he go? All-time players.
He's certainly in my top 20. Certainly.
I'd have him around 12, 13, 14, around there.
Yeah.
I think he's top 15.
He's not top 10, is he? You can't. We would be pushing him a little bit more, and we probably would personally put him there. But
does Di Stefano make the top 10?
I think he possibly does, sort of 9, 10.
10, yeah. Puskas just behind.
Just behind.
Fantastic. Yeah. Any modern players you think are reminiscent of Puskas?
Oh, God.
Let's put you on the spot there.
Yeah, that is. Just thinking of that inside forward role, I suppose. That's very difficult, isn't it? Because speed certainly wasn't something he really had. But someone like a Salah, in terms of the goal record he's got for not a central striker, but also how integral he was, leading light in that Liverpool side, in that Honvéd side, and then particularly for Hungary as well.
Would you huge character? Maybe like a Sergio Aguero?
Yeah, although Aguero's more out and out striker, isn't he? But yeah. I mean, the goals record is ridiculous.
I suppose you question that. We should ask listeners. Who do you think you remind
style
of
today? Play?
Technically excellent as well.
Yeah, he was technically excellent.
Maybe like a Messi. Who knows?
Yeah,
maybe bigger than Messi.
Yeah, because he wasn't someone necessarily that was beating loads of players. But his goal record's ridiculous, and he did just sort of play. Well, they played a false nine, didn't they? With certainly for Hungary with Hidegkuti, who's also got an incredible goals record. And Hidegkuti's dropping back is what allowed him to come in. The front three, I suppose, of Coxix, Hidegkuti, and
that's such a good front three.
And Puskás. I suppose again back for you for Liverpool, that reminiscent of your front three that you had.
Oh the boys. Yeah. Fab. Right, happy with that?
Yeah, I am. I think I'm glad we got to chat about him a bit.
How good was he? He was class.
He's good.
What a player. Okay, thank you so much for listening. You can check out more of our content by going to our YouTube channel at TFHBS. The same handle then for our Twitter as well. Always posted on there. We've got TikTok at the Football History Boys. We also have Instagram at the Football History Boys as well. So please try and like, subscribe, follow.
Give us a 5-star rating.
Thumbs up. 5-star rating on here would be amazing. And that's everything.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll see you again for another one very soon.